So Josh has brought with us his model of a nib, which I was admiring earlier because it's so dang cute. Hi everyone, welcome to this video. I'm Daisy with Yoseka, and I am super excited to be here today with my kind of new friend, Josh Lax.
Hey.
Hi.
I've been telling you all about my life without you really asking about it.
That's true.
That's how we became friends.
We've been talking, and well, I guess, when did I first meet you, Josh?
I think it was like the Baltimore, one of the shows you came to before Stationery Fest.
Maybe,
I think I met you and Neil. And then I came to the shop with Kimberly Lau.
Oh,
she always goes to New York after like one of the East Coast shows.
Yeah.
So I came with her here. I'd never been here before. And it was awesome. It was revelatory.
Oh,
we can get into that later, but that's not why we're here, right?
Well, Josh, for those of you who don't know Josh, he is a nibmeister, nib grinder. What do you call yourself?
I call myself a nib professional.
Nib professional.
Nib professional.
Okay.
In that I do it for others, not just as a hobby.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I like that. Okay, a nib professional. He works on nibs and he does it for others, often at pen shows. He is local to the New York area, which is why he is here in store today. And people are always asking me, I always get questions actually via email. Where can I find someone to grind my nib? Where can I go? And you're the local guy, so I always refer to you. And I thought that, why not invite Josh in to do a video? I've wanted to do this for a long time actually. And yeah, I wanted to do this just to kind of share more about nib grinding, what it is for those of you who have never heard of it, don't know what it is, or maybe you have heard of it and you're like, you don't really get it. So Josh is here to answer all of our questions, and I'm really excited to do this video with you.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
Okay, well let me just get started by asking you, how did you first get into fountain pens and nib grinding?
All right, so fountain pens real quick. My wife got me a rollerball from, I don't know, Acme? Company.
Okay.
She got me an Acme rollerball.
It's like a fashion. They do like clothes too, right?
No, the Acme is like a Hawaii-based company,
and
basically they have like they have like 2 or 3 pen shapes that they get like artists to like design like a lacquer coating almost.
Okay.
So like some will look a lot like painting, some will be like very like graphic design based because I'll look at those. Sometimes they get like architects to do it, so it'll be like kind of like blueprinty or concept based. Anyway, she got me this one. It has like circles around it and like varying intervals. And it was really cool and I started using it. And at some point I bought, after I started working.
So this is like this is a while ago.
Yeah, this is like, we're talking like 2009, 2008, 2009.
Okay.
So I've been doing this actually, now you say that, like, remarkable long time. So I got one of Acme sells like a fountain pen attachment. It's like a section with a nib and everything. Yeah. And you unscrew.
You screw it onto the roller ball.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Or you take the roller ball out, whatever.
Yeah.
And what happened was I started using it and I knew nothing about fountain pens other than like you stick the cartridge or whatever in and it goes. Well, it dried out and I didn't realize it like dried out. I thought it just like a ballpoint or a roller ball just stays writing all the time.
Right.
So I went on the internet, which if you're looking not to get into something these days is the wrong thing to do.
Yeah, that was your first mistake.
Yeah, and I went on the internet, I started seeing all this stuff and like I found like the online forums and lo and behold, here we are, what is it, 17 years later now? So I'm doing a video about nib work and stuff like that. So that's how I got into it. Nib grinding, nib modification, I would also say I do nib repairs and adjustments and things like that, and we can talk all about that in a second. That I got into kind of, we'll say circuitously, in the sense it went like this. So I love vintage pens. Hopefully we'll talk a little bit about that in a little bit. But I went and got trained by Richard Binder, who sort of was like one of the forefront people creating like the whole idea of like fountain pen services as it exists today. There's a few different people, he's not the only one, but he was like a major figure in pushing that whole thing forward. So I went and I learned about vintage pen restoration from him. And, you know, that was really cool. I used some of that knowledge, you know, all the time. But he also talked about nibs as part of the course. And then I went back to him to get more advice, more teaching, more practice on nibs. Why did I do that? Well, going back to going on the internet being the worst thing you could do if you don't want to like amass a huge collection of something.
Yeah.
I had bought all these steel nib pens over the years, and they were all mediums and broads, and they all wrote the same. And I was like, kind of like, what am I gonna do with this?
Right.
And I had like a light bulb moment, and I'm like, oh, I'll ask Richard to teach me how to like change the tips on everything, so that they'll all write differently, and then I'll have like a brand new collection almost.
Okay, I see. So this was like a real like a personal passion driven kind of thing. You weren't you weren't driven by like, oh, I want to grind other people's nibs for them. You were just like, I want to make more pens for myself.
Yeah, or I want to do, well, the way I looked at it, right, is that, you know, you would have to pay a fee for each one of those pens. But I had access to, you know, a master of all this, so why not go there and learn it myself? And I was doing it really for myself. I had no pretensions at that point that I was gonna somehow like enter the practice of nib whatevering. So I started doing it, practicing for a few years, and then there is in fact a collectors club in New York City called the Big Apple Pen Club, which I was a part of. I haven't been in a while.
You're a founding member.
I am a founding member. I was
of the Big Apple Pen Club.
Yeah, I was the president for a few years.
Oh, okay. And then the current president is Mina.
Mina, who's doing a great job.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, but why do? Yeah. Sorry. Finish the story. To finish the story, people at the club, particularly like one or two people, encouraged me to do it for other people, like grinding and things of that nature. So I just kind of jumped right into it in 2016. And so I did like the Long Island Pen Show when it still existed. I did the DC Pen Show, and it just kind of like went from there.
I see. Yeah. And then I guess you touched on this a little bit, but I've always been curious about like the history behind nib grinding. Like you mentioned Richard Binder and like really kind of shaping nib servicing and restoring pens. Do those two things kind of really go hand in hand?
Somewhat. I mean, I think usually people either see someone who specializes in restoration or someone who specializes in nibs, depending on what they need done. Right? So
usually it's separate.
To give people kind of just like I'm gonna try to make it brief. As you can tell, I like to talk. The brief overview is, right, so if like you buy a vintage pen, right? Like any part of that pen may need some tender love and care, right? And usually what though is you need someone, if you're not doing it yourself, and I encourage everyone to learn this, but if you don't, you can go to someone who can repair the filling system, so you can actually have ink go into it. Oftentimes though, if you're a nib specialist, nib professional, nibmeister, any of those things, and someone brings you a vintage pen, you do need to know like how that thing comes apart. And like what you can and cannot do, and like what the limits are. Right? Because then if you try and like do what you might do to say like a modern Estabrook or something, like the SD, like you may end up causing more harm than there was there before. So you just got to know, like, you have to have like a base of knowledge on whatever
how the pen comes together, how it comes apart. I see. Okay. What about like, did anybody do nib grinding? Like, you know, fountain pens are from hundreds of years, like 100 years ago, right? Like, did anybody do nib grinding back then?
Yeah. So that's a great question. Kind of, I've never actually answered your previous question.
It's okay.
So
there's a lot of ground to cover here.
Yes, it is, and I'm very excited. You can see I'm very animated. My hands. For those of you watching, you see the hands going, just like stop what you're doing because a lot is going to come at you. But basically, so the answer is, as long as people were making fountain pens, there were people in the factories that were shaping the nibs. I mean, the Sailor does that today. Pilot. I mean, some are more automated than others, but like you can go online and see like the entire Pelican nib making process. And you'll see like there's stamping, pressing, all this stuff. But in the end, right, someone's got to finish it, because with all the cutting and grinding and sanding, right, like you're not going to get that like good feeling if it's just left like unfinished. In terms of like now where we're at, where, you know, there's like a handful of people around the world that like do this, and there's people even like stacking nibs and things like that. You know, basically it's doing those sorts of processes, but just like on a one-on-one basis. And like for me, I can't say for everybody, but like there's some folks that actually worked for pen companies that got into doing nib work on, you know, like the artisan level, or I shouldn't say artisan, but like the one-on-one.
Like they used to be like in the factories,
Yeah.
like doing the finishing.
Exactly.
Okay,
Like they worked for Sailor, for example, doing the nibs there. Those people have taught others, I should say. The way I learned, going back to Richard Binder, was Richard at some point to figure out how to shape nibs just looked at vintage nibs. So if like you look at like how I do a stub, like it's gonna look kind of like the way an old Parker or an old Waterman would have done a stub, or like some of the British brands. And the reason's not because that's like my own creation, it's just how I was taught
your
to
training.
do it. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like that's the product.
Okay,
from
so
it.
there's kind of, that's interesting to think of how there might be like different schools of nib grinding based on what that person studied originally, right?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, I'd say the majority of folks kind of do it the way like the Japanese, we'll call it the Japanese school for lack of a better word. For those of you who go to pen shows, the difference is like you'll see those people use like a machine that kind of has like the things that spin on the side. And so like they're doing these like kind of like swooping motions on your nib, right? That's like how I would describe the Japanese school.
Okay,
versus the way I was taught to do it is on like a rotary tool that spins, and that's the way Richard developed this. And you know, like almost all the motions and everything you do to finish it comes kind of like from that. There's no real, one is not right and one is not wrong. They're just two different approaches.
Yeah.
The shaping, I would say, varies from person to person. Like everybody, like I don't necessarily do it exactly like the people who taught me did it. You know, like we all work out our own things.
Yeah.
It's just a different way people approach the methods and the means.
That makes sense. Okay. Okay, that's really interesting. I actually never knew that. That's so interesting. Yeah. So anyway, what is nib grinding?
Right,
what are you doing when you're nib grinding? Are you going to use the model?
Let us go to the model.
So Josh has brought with us his model of a nib, which I was admiring earlier because it's so dang cute.
It is actually a vintage advertising model. So this, like, if you think about it, so if you think about going into like a pen shop like 40, 60 years ago, and like having like really cool like stylized displays, kind of like you have in here for other stuff, right? This was something I think provided by, this was in this case Schaefer, and Schaefer, this is like a model of like one of Schaefer's style nibs. So it's like what they call a conical nib, like you can see like it goes all the way around. Which is another thing about vintage pens, is that, like, you know, back then they did all sorts of crazy stuff because there were so many people buying fountain pens that like the market was there. It's almost like, you know, ink, like people like spend a lot on ink now. So we have a lot of ink available.
So many different colors. So in similar ways, there's so many different nibs because everybody had, there was just like more interest, right?
Yeah, more interest and more money for R&D, more, you know, willingness to like take a chance on some crazy model. So that's where you get things where it's like literally like, you know, what they call a conical nib. Like
so
it's
this
circular.
was like revolutionary when it came out. Like this was like, what is this conical nib kind of thing? Like nobody had ever seen anything like it. That's so interesting.
And then I like this because it's like the perfect size just to like give people like the basics of what we're talking about.
Okay, so back to the question, what is nib grinding?
All right, so what is nib grinding, right? Modern pens, meaning things made like, we'll say from like 1995 onward, right? Tend to have like a standardized nib, and that standardized nib tends to have a ball tip. And the reason they have the ball tip is so that it appeals to the most amount of people, and they do that by trying to have the line that you write with the pen be as consistent in every direction as possible, right?
Yes, yeah.
But when you acquire, like, let's say you want a maker pen, meaning like someone who makes like small batch pens, right? And you want them from different people. So what happens is you buy those, but those people can't afford to like make in-house nibs. It's like a tremendous expense. So they use, understandably, standardized nib units from Bach is one company, another one is Schmidt, another one is Jovo. Jovo is now like, I think probably the most ubiquitous one in the market of those types of nibs. Anyway, they're all good nibs for the most part, but they have these ball tips, right? And so if you have 8 different pens all with a Jovo medium.
And this is not a ball tip.
No.
That's
so,
what you're saying.
Yeah,
Okay.
and we'll get back to like kind of like what's going on with that one.
Okay.
Because we'll explain that in a second.
Okay.
So basically what we do as nib grinders is we make cuts to take off parts of that ball, to reshape it, make it more rectangular, make it more blade-like. There's a very dedicated sub-community of people who want really, really, really fine nibs.
Yeah.
And that's sometimes just a preference, or sometimes it's a professional thing where they're an artist and they want to be able to like really make fine lines in their drawings or something.
Yeah.
So all of that results in people wanting to make modifications to the nibs. And so nib grinding is really just providing people that alternative to what comes out of the factory. And what's really cool now, again, like showing like kind of like the revival of fountain pens, is that brands are now hiring not just one, but multiple nib people to modify nibs for them.
Can I ask you a question, a follow-up question?
Yeah.
So you were talking about how all modern nibs these days have a ball at the tip. And some grinds, basically grinding, what you do in grinding is basically take the ball and you're basically just shaping it into some other shape, right?
Yeah.
And one of the examples you gave was like grinding the ball down to make like a super, super fine, extra fine nib. So is the ball on the nib different for an extra fine pen versus a broad pen?
So if I may go back to the model, right? All right, so let's just assume for the moment that this is a broad nib. I mean, it kind of looks like it. What I would say is that this one's like shaped more like you would see in like a stub, right? So I mentioned that like rectangular shape.
Yes.
So like if I was a grinder, well, I am a grinder, but if I was doing a stub, I would take off part, you know, like if you look at the bottom here, it's flat. If you look at the front here, it's flat. Or the top, I should say. And even the front's like a little shaped, like a little flat. It's not a real nib. Anyway, this is how I would shape a stub. That's another reason I kind of like this model.
So you would take the ball and basically turn it into this?
Yeah.
Okay.
A little bit different, but the tipping, all the materials are the same, whether it's an extra fine or a triple broad or something like that. However, to really make like a good fine nib work, you have to like remove material, not just from here, but like from down here. And you gotta remove material from like under here.
You have to like thin out the tines.
Yeah, you gotta thin out the tines.
Okay.
You gotta like I was trained to do these like diagonal cuts over here. And why are you doing that? Really interesting, but I can say this now that I've dealt with like hundreds of people.
Okay.
And written with tons of pens. When you're writing with a pen, like you don't actually like realize how many like different like parts of that nib are like hitting the paper. So like people will come and like they'll like, you know, they'll talk about like pencil-like feedback. But some people don't like that idea of pencil-like feedback, meaning like you feel like the grain of the paper and things like that. So what I've learned over time is that sometimes the problem is like not here on the nib where like you're writing, because that's really where you're writing, right? Like over here. But like all the scratchiness is like coming from like up here.
Really?
Or over there. Or it's like back here somewhere.
But
and
not
it's just,
because that part is contacting the paper. Is it?
I don't know. That's the mystery of it. But I can just tell you for myself, like that, if I hand something to somebody, it feels okay. And they're like, no, it's still, there's something not right. You check it out. I go and like, I'll feel around and usually it's like right here.
Really?
I'll feel like, oh, all right, that's not working for you. So
maybe it comes down to like also the like how much pressure somebody's using their pen and like how they're gripping their pen, the angle that they're writing, right?
Yeah, and that's like kind of like one of the challenges I think for people in the nib field is the idea like you and I might experience the same thing very differently. And so like I've over the years tried to think about like how do we address like subjectivity, and in actually thinking about what we were going to talk about today, I was like, well, how do we breach that, right? So like one is experience. Like I know over time what people tend to prefer, right? That's like the practice of it. But then I was like, well, if someone was to ask me like, what is your standard? Like, how do you know when something's good? I would probably say, and I didn't think about this till recently, like really when we were prepping to do this video, is I think that what I'm chasing is like the feeling of like a pilot nib. Like the Pilot 14K nibs, I guess. Those were like the first like fancy nibs that I used. And I was like, And I think to me, that's like what feels right. I mean, I know I'm going for a couple other things, but like in terms of like what is like a smooth nib, like I guess that, for me, that's like my standard. Like if I can get it to that, like I feel like I've done a good job. Not always
agree
possible.
with that. Yeah.
But
Pilot makes like super smooth nibs.
Yeah, so that's
objectively.
like yeah, exactly. So right, it'd be interesting to interview people, like to do like a test, right, to see like who has time for this, but you know, like to see like, you know, what it is, our empirical stuff about like how much this or that, you know, people prefer. I mean, we talk about it again, like I talk to other nib people. We talk about some of the stuff, like where is, you know, sort of like people's minds with things and their like what they're feeling and stuff like that. And I guess some of it's intuitive, but I always think is there more like sciencey stuff to know about. I don't know. I don't know. I wonder if Pilot keeps, you know, they do that like writing test. I wonder if they keep all the data and like they secretly are like
they're making some major nib with that one.
Maybe, I don't know. I don't know. Well, and that, so, you know, getting back to like what I do as a nib person, right? For those of you who may have seen it shows, you know, Pilot does this analysis and gives you like a printout.
Right. So they do a handwriting analysis. You basically take a pen and you write, and then they have some software that analyzes like your angle of writing and all of these other things.
So the reason I bring that up is another thing we do in the nib profession is we help people overcome challenges presented by the angle that they write. And you frequently see this challenge with sailor nibs, because sailor nibs are cut different than virtually all other nibs available in the market. I don't know if you ever looked at one. You know,
not under a loop,
so basically, going back to the model, what they do in their nibs is when they finish them, they like make these cuts like on the upper corners of the nib. And they do that, I think, on pretty much every nib width that they offer. And it's like most extreme on like the zoom. Maybe the music nib doesn't have it because it's like more of a stub, but pretty much everything else has this. Now, if you write like with like at a high angle, right? Like anywhere from like straight up to like, I don't know, 85 degrees, which there's a fair number of people that do that, particularly like when you think of like how you have to write for some of those journals, like the size, things like that. Position of like the other items and like your planner and stuff like that. You may be getting a lot of feedback.
That might not be fun,
and so you're like, I love this pen. The colors are great. The ink I'm using is great. Like it fits me. Like I'm just a total expression of who I am. Except I hate using it because it's scratchy.
Oh my God,
Well, there is a solution to that, which is you take it to a nib person, or I'm happy to teach you as well. But you know, you can learn how to do it, or you can bring it to a nib person because it's not that hard. And basically, you need to just reshape that area of the nib so that when the nib makes contact with the paper, it's not digging. Because like all these little hard edges can, you know, dig into paper, which is fibrous. So that is what's giving people discomfort. So I see a lot of people who are like, buy the Sailor. They see the Sailor as like a kind of like a new echelon in their like pen experience, which there's no reason not to. But then they encounter this like, well, what's going on here? Like, I've never had this problem. And obviously, you know, like if you're not used to it, it may like make no sense. But the reality, all it is that the way they finish the nib just doesn't suit that person's writing angle. And so we can do things to the nib to eliminate that problem.
Interesting. Okay, that's super enlightening. Thank you. That kind of brings me, because you kind of touched upon like scratchiness, right? And scratchiness is very subjective. Obviously, we talked about that, but scratchy nibs, you know, like to what degree are all nibs like a little bit scratchy depending on the angle that you're writing? Is it just if you finish it a certain way, or like can a really smooth nib be scratchy to you if you are writing kind of differently with it? And then that leads me to like, should everybody kind of see a nibmeister to tailor the pen to them?
Really good question. So start with the manufacturer, right? They had a notion of like what this item should be when they start shipping it to the people, to the vendors, whoever. And I guess there's certain things that are like objectively like gonna be a problem. Like if you write at a high angle and there's a sharp edge at the top of the nib, meaning like at the top of the tip, it comes to a point, like that objectively will inevitably, physics tells us, will dig into paper and be a problem that needs to be corrected. So if that is like a repeated thing for you, you can have that adjusted, right? Or look at like products you enjoy and not go with that one because you just don't like it. But usually there's something else beyond the nib that I think draws people to the pens. So in terms of just general use, like will there always be a degree of scratchiness? I guess it depends on the situation and what you're looking at, because something that's worn or has a defect in it, like, yeah, you might want that corrected because it's not really what it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
But if it's the way it's made, you may say to yourself, hey, like, I don't want to change this because I want to like save this the way it was made, and I'll just deal with it, right? So you don't necessarily have to do it. There are things that happen, again, kind of going back to like that writing angle, that can always be addressed. Most manufacturers, I think, are looking at like the pen is going to be held at like a certain window of angle or a certain angle range.
Right.
And if it's outside that range, then they're not really addressing it.
Right.
So I guess from that perspective, if you are someone who's outside that range, which is totally going to happen for for different reasons, then you might find that there is like a reason to have these nibs tuned or something like that. I don't know, it's hard to say. It's like so much is based on preference. I mean, there's some people who tell you like, I want this nib so smooth, it's like I'm not even writing. Literally, it's like I'm amputated and the words are just appearing on the page, right?
Which I have experienced nibs that smooth and they're like not fun for me to write with.
Yeah,
like,
some people hate that. Some people are like, nope, too smooth. Then there's some people that are like, I want to feel it, or they want to hear like that scratching noise when they're like writing, you know? And so all of that is to say, like, think of like all the variations that can be.
Yeah.
I teach at various events, these nib smoothing classes. I'm going to actually teach my sons on video.
Oh, you have sons?
I do, I have two.
Oh.
All right, so we were talking this morning. I'm launching a YouTube channel.
Yes.
It's going to be very educational.
I can't wait to check it out.
One of the things I want to do is I want to teach a 10-year-old and a 6-year-old, really 7, a 10-year-old and a 7-year-old how to do some of this pen stuff to demonstrate to people that it can be done.
Oh my God, I will be watching that.
Yeah, so
I would love to.
We're gonna cover some of this in addition to other things.
Cool.
But,
do you have a channel yet?
I do. I had to lock it in as soon as I had the name in my head.
Okay, what's the
It's gonna be called Uncapped.
Unkept.
Uncapped.
Uncapped!
Like, no cap.
Okay, that's really good.
All right.
That's good.
So you can find it. There is no content in there. It is coming soon. I'm sure the
I will
public.
link it. We'll link it as well for everybody to subscribe to Josh's channel and watch his first video and all his videos.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
But this stuff is people can learn it, and another thing that I think people assume about nib workers is that we're all sort of like in this little cabal, and you have to like know somebody and get vouched for, and it's like a secret society of nib people, and like that's not really like how it works. I mean, obviously there's no secret society.
No, I'm just kidding.
But like I think that like if you're gonna like fountain pens are a great thing. And it's a great thing to use. There's like a lot of benefits to come from it. But obviously there's like little things that happen along the way. So like knowing the issues that can arise with a particular pen takes out of all that frustration when you're like sitting there and you're like, what's going on with this? Why isn't it writing? So if you can understand some of that stuff and then learn slowly with your comfort level, like how to address some of it, like you should do that, right? Like if you drive a car, you know how to change a tire, right? People did know. Or you have AAA, right? So why not have the AAA option and at least know the know-how to do it? And for simple things like, why is my pen just not writing? Why is it skipping?
Yeah. Okay. So I have another question. Basically, somebody has an appointment with you at a pen show or goes to see you. What can they expect? What should they bring? What can they expect? Like, how long will they be sitting with you? Can you shed some light on that?
Sure. For me, I book appointments in like 30-minute increments.
Okay.
And I use like a Square scheduling app that's like free, first of all.
Okay.
But also really easy for me to use, and I think for most people to use.
So someone gets 30 minutes of your time when they book an appointment.
Yes.
And that's pretty standard?
It's pretty standard. Okay. I think some people do 20.
Okay.
I tend to not block off time. I just kind of like let it all in.
Yeah.
Because and I think other people don't do that. They'll block off, they'll work in blocks. I find that I can manage fitting people in often, like even if I have like a full day book solid, because I give people the option of bringing, we can try and do as many pens in the time allotted as possible.
Okay, so people can bring more than one, just one pen, okay.
Yeah, and so sometimes it works out, we can get through all of them. Sometimes the person before them only has one pen, or the person after, so it all kind of evens out.
Okay.
I kind of like, I don't know if it's frustrating for people to hear me say this, but like it usually works out with people who make appointments. Like we get everything in, so to speak. And then what I try and do if I'm at a show, or if like I was set up here or something, I would, have like a wait list for those moments where I become available because things move faster or someone didn't get there at time and it's coming later, like we're moving things around.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. It's like, how do you actually get the appointment? So pre-book, or you take your chances with a wait list, but
you're usually pretty good about that.
I try my best.
Yeah.
I mean, and I try to be honest also about like what people can expect. So like certain shows you pre-book, but like, the rhythm of it is like you're gonna be able to fit other people in. Like the DC show or Baltimore, which are like really busy shows, it's much harder to do that. Same with maybe San Francisco. It depends on like what part of the day. But we have an appointment, or we fit you in. I fit you in. Really, like it's sort of then like a consultation at that point. I take a look. You tell me what's going on or what you're looking for. I use various levels of magnification to investigate like what you're saying.
But usually, I guess some people they're coming to you with either a problem on their pen, right?
Yeah.
Like this is scratchy. Please fix it. Or should they have in mind the kind of grind that they want on their nib?
No,
okay.
Definitely not. Often people do have some concept, However, sometimes people come and they're just like, this is boring to me, and I just like, what do you think? And I kind of have some kind of go-to ideas that I like to float out there.
So it's like bespoke.
And give people feedback. If it's because it's like presenting a problem, I guess one set of advice I could potentially provide. If it's a situation where they're just like, they want to do something and they're like, oh, I have these, like, someone will say like, I want to do something different, but I have a bunch of architects and I have this, and like, I just, what do you think? And so like, I have testers with me, so like I can let people try like variations, and then we can talk about how to make variations on those variations. So we just have to be able to create a pad on the tip of the nib where it's gonna meet the paper. We can't have like literally a needle point. There is no such thing as like a literally needle point.
Even though there is a grind called needle point, there's actually no literal needle point. Is what you're saying.
The physics, you can't have like an actual needle point. The needle point is just a very, very fine point. But you need kind of like, going to the model, like you need like whatever is this, like it needs to be able to like make contact with the paper and flow.
Yeah,
right?
That makes sense.
So as long as we meet that requirement, like really, like we can do a lot different things to shape things.
Very cool.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
That's great to know. And then what's the best way that someone can get in touch with you after watching this video to have you work on their nib for them?
Probably the best way is one of two ways.
Okay.
Well, I'm on various social media platforms. So like I'm on Reddit. Everything is JJ Lax Penco.
Okay.
Like if you just put JJ Lax Penco.
That's your handle for everything?
Yeah, but pretty much, consistent.
JJ Lax Penco.
Exactly.
Okay.
So if you throw that into Google, you'll probably get my Instagram account, you might get Reddit posts, you might even get the YouTube channel, though there's no content, so I don't think the algorithm is pushing me anywhere. But in addition, you can just email me at jjlaxpenco at gmail.com.
Okay. Do most people send their pens to you, or do you do most of your work at pen shows?
I would say, like, by numbers, probably a lot more. Well, I don't know. It's a mix. It's hard to say.
Okay, so both are equally good ways of getting in touch with you to
exactly.
get your nib.
Yeah. The other thing is, like, I've been doing work with brands and stuff, so that throws off the count of like what the breakdown is. But what I usually tell people is get in touch with me. We'll talk about what it is you need. I try to be as accurate as possible about turnaround time, because sometimes like I have something in my other profession that's moving
right.
on the
Josh
horizon.
is actually, he does not do this full time. This is really just something you love to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I just it's total passion project, or that's how it started. But when you commit to make like thousands of scribes a year, it gets a little bit beyond that. So
yeah, that's true.
But I try to be honest with people about it, because I don't want people waiting endlessly. Like that's the worst, in my mind, that's the worst thing you can do is just have a whole pile of pens.
Oh my God, that's stressful for you too, though.
Yeah, like, you know, like just constantly having to respond to people. Where does it go? You know, what's going on? What's going on?
I imagine most people are pretty understandable. Like, I mean, I feel like if I were sending my pen to be worked on, like I know that that's like something that it's a customization. There might be some back and forth, right? So I wouldn't be expecting immediate turnaround time anyway.
Yeah, and I think most people are receptive to like good communication, even if there's a wait. You know?
Absolutely, I agree with that.
It's the being in limbo that probably drives people nuts.
Yes.
You know, I would say most of the people I know that do this want everyone to be happy. Like they're not in it to just like burn every bridge and, you know, like scorched earth the nib world. They want people to be happy and they want to give everybody the attention that they deserve in this, because that is what we're doing, right? Like it's a service we're providing based on your particular requests.
Yeah.
And, you know, obviously it's a business, so we want people to be coming back.
Yeah.
So most people who do this because they want to do it. They care about what they're doing, and at the end of the day, like they want like to further like the community, because the community is the market, right? So, you know, most of us want you all to be happy. We don't, you know, like we don't get into this because we're just like, yeah, we'll just start a nib mill. Like, I don't even know how that would work, you know? So
this is your get rich quick scheme.
Yeah, you know, I don't even know how you would get rich quick.
Get rich quick scheme.
Yeah, you're like, you call like a fence downtown. They're like, oh, what the hell is 500 nibs? You know, there's no way that's gonna go that way.
Yeah.
So, but no, most people really do care and have like a lot of appreciation and appreciate like that. A lot of the times people are bringing, you know, you're not really seeing like a lot of Lamy safaris. You're seeing stuff that like either come from like something with like real artistry, like, you know, like an independent maker.
Yeah.
You know, even, I mean, I hate to use the term independent maker, because even like when you get to like, I don't know if this is your experience, but like when you get to know some of the manufacturers, like they're not like these massive companies. Like
no,
they'll be like a handful.
Not in this community.
Yeah, they'll be like a handful of people like grinding it out, no pun intended, every day, and like there's a story for them all, and like we don't really hear it that much. But like they're all like working really hard. I mean, I was like in the Leonardo factory, and like they were doing things that like I don't think most people know that they do to like make sure the product is like as best it can be, and it's by hand. So, and I think that there's a lot of manufacturers who are in that boat, even if they're like big. So, you know, people are bringing us stuff like that, and so it's like just like a chef respects the product. Like we're trying to do the same thing. I think.
Oh, I love that. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thanks, Josh. Okay, well, I think that's like all the questions I had. I think for anybody who didn't know anything about nib grinding, hopefully you have watched this and learned a lot, and the idea of making an appointment with a nib grinder is a little bit less daunting. We will also try and have Josh back in our store to come and grind nibs and take appointments here, so be on the lookout for that. What are some pens that you use and that you think are cool?
The first thing I'm going to admit to everybody, and I'm totally proud about this, is that these are not pristine. They are not in the best shape, and that is totally what makes it great to have it.